Zale was a municipal power grid technician. His job was routing bioelectric currents for civilian transit hubs. Wonderful. Excellent. Now he sat on the bridge of a Talvine capital ship, designated as an emergency high-volt caster. The actual military officer had overloaded his own nervous system during the jump. Splendid career trajectory. They were hunting a lone human fighter. Just one. They dropped out of hyperspace, surrounded it with 3,000 warships. Overkill. Naturally. Outside the viewport, drifting through the vacuum right near the human's battered hull, was a glass bottle. An actual, archaic glass bottle. It contained a rolled-up physical star chart. Space debris, Zale assumed. He really should have paid more attention to it. The absurdity of that little glass bottle makes sense eventually. You will want to hear how this ends. Trust the record on that. They had 3,000 plasma batteries locked on her. She did not move. Zale was profoundly annoyed by the delay, but he was also sweating a low-grade electrical current that tasted strongly of ozone, which meant he was terrified, though for the life of his ancestors he couldn't explain why one completely silent ship frightened a veteran armada. Scan the target, Fleet Command barked over the neural link. Zale initiated the scan. Data scrolled. Life signs stable. Too stable. He ran the diagnostic twice. Municipal equipment was notoriously faulty. He assumed military gear was no better. It wasn't. She wasn't preparing weapons. She wasn't charting a jump drive. The human was yawning. He checked the optical feed. Well, he checked the secondary optical feed because the primary one had a greasy thumbprint from the previous technician. Through the clean feed, the image was undeniable. Pilot Sarah, according to the registry broadcast, was stretching her arms behind her head, expanding her jaw. A yawn. She wasn't brave. She was bored. Target is unresponsive, Zale reported. His bioelectric nodes were sparking erratically, sputtering, green arcs of loose voltage snapping against his console. It was highly unprofessional. He tried to center himself. He forced his charge back down to a baseline hum. A municipal tech does not panic. The tactical board remained static. They had her, but the calm he had manufactured evaporated instantly when the human finally sent a transmission. "You're early." 2 words. The fleet commander hissed, his own bioelectricity flaring. "Order the kill shot. End this." Zale raised his hand to the firing matrix. His mate was waiting for him back on Telvash. Their spawn pool was due to hatch in exactly 3 rotations, and he desperately wanted to be there, which is a completely irrelevant thing to think about while executing an orbital military strike on a lone pilot. But the brain does what it wants. He primed the plasma coils. The reticle turned red. He noticed a small scratch on the glass of his console. It looked exactly like the scratch on his diagnostic pad back home. So he sat there with his hand hovering over the kill switch, and she just yawned again, and he realized nobody on this entire dreadnought was breathing. Then space broke. The sensor array detected a massive gravitational anomaly. It didn't. Zale had to restart his own cognitive loop to process the event. The sensor array completely failed to detect the anomaly until it was already inside their formation. Alarms triggered. Not the standard proximity warnings. The deep, guttural claxons reserved for celestial collapse. "Report!" the commander screamed. Zale couldn't. His bioelectricity died. Completely. The erratic sparking stopped, his nodes flatlined, and his entire eel-like body went pitch dark in the command chair. An involuntary biological response. His skin tightened, not the standard bioelectric prickle. Tighter. A vicious, muscular contraction. It was an instinct from before his species had language. Make yourself small. The predator is here. Something was uncloaking behind her. Not one ship. 500. The tactical display rendered 500 incoming profiles in blinding red. Actually, no. He needed to process that again. The display rendered 500 impossibilities. Zale stared at the whole classifications. He recognized a jagged, obsidian cruiser from a historical archive. Well, he recognized the hull geometry, but the scale was entirely wrong. The Kalan were supposed to be extinct. The archive was incorrect. Extinct species do not generally equip their vessels with antimatter artillery. He tried to rationalize the data, a glitch, a systemic failure of the imaging matrix. He cycled the primary sensors. The screen refreshed. The red icons remained. The brief artificial calm he had forced upon himself collapsed entirely. The panic returned, heavier and infinitely more sharp. His command console was completely dark. His bioelectricity refused to reignite. "Identify them," the fleet commander demanded over the comms. Nobody answered. The entire bridge crew was experiencing the exact same biological shutdown. 500 alien warships sat idle in the void behind the single human fighter. They dwarfed the Talveen dreadnoughts. They defied standard physics. Then their engines ignited. Perfect symmetrical shock diamonds bloomed in their plasma thrusters, hundreds of them, thousands of brilliant geometric points of light tearing the vacuum apart. It was visual terror, a woven lattice of pure energy that blinded the flagship's optical sensors and overloaded the shielding grid. The sheer thermal output was enough to strip the hull plating off a cruiser from 1,000 kilometers away, and Zale realized with a sickening plunge in his primary stomach that he was watching the raw, unfiltered industrial might of a galactic alliance nobody in the current Synod even knew existed. The human pilot's previous actions suddenly made horrifying sense. Her ship was heavily damaged. The Armada had assumed she was a failed scout, a casualty of poor navigation who couldn't fight back. Her failure was deliberate. She was a tether, and that yawn. She hadn't been ignoring death. She had been waiting for the rest of her shift to clock in. How delightful. The Talveen had spent 20 minutes threatening a predator's lure. A new transmission overrode the encrypted channels. It bypassed every firewall the dreadnought had. The audio feed didn't crackle. It was perfectly clear. "We were here before your sensors activated. Think about what that means." The voice was quiet. It carried the specific gravity of a threat that required no volume. Zale noticed the ambient temperature of the bridge had dropped exactly 2 degrees. The climate control system was compensating for the crew's sudden lack of body heat. He was completely paralyzed by the overwhelming display of force, and yet a small, cynical part of his brain was deeply irritated that he would definitely be missing his spawn pool hatching. The fleet commander did not issue a stand-down order. He didn't have to. Across the Talveen Armada, plasma coils were manually severed, weapons offline, shields retracted. Total capitulation. Zale's own dorsal scales were locked perfectly flat against his spine in a rigid involuntary defensive posture. They were entirely at the Alliance's mercy. Outside the viewport, the archaic glass bottle continued its slow drift. The rolled parchment inside caught the light of 500 plasma drives, illuminating the star chart of every hidden world.